What if the pavement in front of your own home was turned against you? That's what a black woman faced when an HOA Karen parked across her driveway, daring her to move. The smirk vanished when the tow truck arrived, its door swinging open with her company's name painted across the side. Imagine this: a driveway bathed in late afternoon light, the concrete still warm from the sun, edges marked by grass trimmed to regulation height. A woman pulls her car forward, the hum of the engine low, steady, like her own breath. She believes she has finally arrived, her first home in a neighborhood that promised safety, order, and belonging. But the silence waiting for her is heavier than welcome. Eyes follow from behind curtains, shadows twitch on porches, and what should have been peace already feels like trial. The door of her car opens. She steps out with a quiet pride, her movements deliberate, as if every gesture carries the weight of years worked, sacrifices made, and dignity earned. The house in front of her, pale siding, clean windows, a white fence framing the lot, is not just a property. It is a marker of resilience. A promise to herself and to the mother who once told her, "Don't wait for welcome. Carry your own." But the welcome here does not come. Karen is the first to speak. She walks briskly across the street, a clipboard tucked beneath her arm, her smile polished sharp. Her words fall with the cadence of rules, not conversation. Karen says, "Hope you know the HOA is strict." "We like things in order." The woman nods, polite, measured. She replies, "Order's good." Keeps things fair. Karen's smile lingers too long, the kind of smile that hides teeth instead of showing them. The silence after feels heavier than the words before it. Around them, the neighborhood stays still, but stillness here does not mean peace. The fence stands bright in the sun, its paint flawless, its lines straight. Yet to her it already feels like a boundary, a reminder. Inside it she is contained. Outside it she is judged. She looks at her door, sturdy, dark wood, waiting to be opened. But she feels even now how easily doors here will shut. The first evening, she walks the driveway alone. The hum of sprinklers echoes across lawns. Families gather inside houses, windows glowing warm, but no one steps out to greet her. She sets down her bag and whispers to herself, almost a prayer. Let this be peace. Peace answers with silence. Morning brings the first note. It is taped neatly to her door, printed words that pretend to be friendly. Welcome. Just a reminder, please review our guidelines. At the bottom, Karen's name is signed in ink, looping, confident. It is not a reminder. It is a warning. The woman folds the paper carefully, but her hands tremble. She remembers her mother again, a flashback like sunlight through storm clouds. Standing tall in church pews when whispered slights carried through the aisles. Never let silence shrink you, her mother had said. Walk through it. Stand taller in it, she breathes deep. The driveway, still hers, feels smaller already. Days pass, and each carries its own shadow. She senses it in how footsteps pause when she walks by, in how conversations die mid-sentence as she approaches. She nods politely, offers greetings, but receives only silence. Silence has weight, and here it is thick enough to press against her chest. One evening she catches Karen watching her from across the street, leaning against her car, clipboard balanced in her hands. Karen's eyes travel the length of the driveway as though measuring it for herself. The woman calls out, steady but firm. She says, "You staring at something?" Karen's reply is sweet, practiced. Karen says, "Just making sure everything's up to code." The exchange hangs in the air, brittle. A neighbor waters his lawn nearby, pretending not to hear, though the water runs off onto the sidewalk and soaks the woman's shoes. She feels the insult land, but holds her ground. Inside her home that night, she stares at the closed door. It feels like a courtroom door, heavy, unwilling to let justice in. She whispers again to herself, "Don't shout at walls. Walk through them." Her mother's voice steadies her, but the unease lingers. Then it happens. Karen parks her car near the edge of her driveway. Not blocking fully, but enough to make the message clear. A line drawn not in law but in arrogance. The woman waits. Maybe it's an accident. Maybe courtesy still exists. Hours pass. The car doesn't move. Neighbors glance, whisper, but no one intervenes. Their silence is louder than any word. She exhales slowly, fighting the heat rising inside. She thinks of fences, of doors, of driveways. Symbols are everywhere now, and all of them seem to speak the same warning. Belonging here comes with conditions. Karen passes by later, her steps light, her tone casual. Karen says, "You should have bought a wider space. Rules don't bend." The woman watches her walk away, every muscle tight with restraint. She replies under her breath, "Then maybe your records are broken." Her words are low, but they steady her. The driveway remains half taken, the silence unbroken. What began as welcome has shifted into warning. What began as a home now feels like contested ground. And in that moment, standing alone before her own house, she knows the truth. Peace here will not be given.
It will have to be claimed. The street is still.
The sun fades. A single door shuts somewhere, heavy as judgment. And the next morning, the war for her driveway begins. The second week settles quiet, but not restful. On a Saturday morning, she pulls into her street after groceries, only to find her driveway blocked. Karen's car sits there angled, deliberate. The groceries weigh heavy in her arms, but heavier still is the humiliation. She waits, heart steady, forcing patience. She calls across the street. She says, "Karen, you're in my driveway." Karen doesn't flinch. She leans against her porch railing, sipping from a mug. Karen says, "Oh, must have slipped."
"I'll move it later. Minute stretch."
Neighbors peek from curtains, some recording, but no one offers help. The driveway, once her promise of belonging, becomes a stage for public disrespect. Her patience is not weakness, but it's mistaken for it. The silence of the neighborhood grows thicker, pressing against her as if daring her to break. By Monday, another notice is taped to her door. Violation, mailbox paint chipped. She touches the metal. "The paint is fine." She frowns, but the letter is signed. HOA board, with Karen's initials curled at the bottom. She mutters, "Weapons dressed as paper." The next week, another arrives. Violation, fence height inconsistent. She measures. It is exact. Her breath sharpens. The rules here are elastic, bending only when Karen pulls the strings. At the mailbox, she confronts Karen. She says, "You write these up yourself?" Karen smirks. Karen says, "We just follow procedure. If you're out of step, it's on you." Neighbors pass, eyes averted, walking faster. Silence works like armor here, protection for them. Isolation for her. The notices pile like stones. Building a wall taller than any fence. She attends the monthly HOA meeting, clutching her folder of responses. Inside, the room smells of coffee and polished wood. 12 chairs face Karen at the head. She speaks with calm clarity, laying out her case. But Karen cuts her off mid-sentence. Karen says, "Please stay on topic." "You're eating time." A man chuckles under his breath. A woman smirks, hiding it behind her hand. Their laughter spreads soft, poisonous, leaving her words unheard. She straightens, voice firmer. She says, "I deserve the same respect as any homeowner here." Karen tilts her head, the silence that follows louder than denial. It's a silence of agreement, her neighbor's complicity wrapped in quiet. She leaves the room not defeated but sharpened. Each silence is a blade, and now she knows how sharp they are willing to cut. That night, sitting at her kitchen table, she finds herself holding the latest notice like it's a relic. Her mind drifts backward, to a kitchen far smaller, walls cracked, but filled with her mother's voice. Her mother had stood tall even when life tried to grind her down. Her mother said, "Don't fight every insult. Choose the ones that matter. Silence can be strength, but don't mistake it for surrender." The memory steadies her. She places the notice in a folder, not in the trash. Every piece of paper is evidence. Every word a brick she will later turn into a wall of her own. The hum of the refrigerator fills the room. Outside, Karen's porch light glows like a watchtower. The woman whispers to herself, "I won't bend." Not like they want me to. Morning brings another clash. Karen, clipboard in hand, strolls by as the woman waters her lawn. Her tone is casual, but every syllable is barbed. Karen says, "Rules don't bend for anyone." "Not even you." The woman lowers the hose, eyes locked on her. She replies, "Then stop bending them for yourself." Karen stiffens, her practiced smile faltering for the first time. For a moment, it's clear. The rules aren't sacred, they're convenient. And Karen wields them not for fairness, but for control. Neighbors walk past, pretending not to hear. Yet whispers trail behind them, faint but new. Karen's words echo long after she's gone, like a refrain in a song meant to wear someone down. But the woman has already decided. She will not dance to Karen's tune. By Friday, the driveway is blocked again. This time, Karen's car sits bold across the center, daring anyone to challenge her. The woman pulls up, jaw clenched, but doesn't explode. She simply parks down the street and walks. Behind curtains, phones are raised. A teenager films from his porch, a woman from her second-story window. Red dots blink, screens glow. Justice is documented, but not defended. The woman pauses halfway to her door, feeling the weight of dozens of unseen eyes. She says aloud, to no one in particular, "You all see it." But you don't speak, her words float into silence. Later she finds clips online, Karen's car, her own walk of quiet dignity, neighbors gossiping in comments. But no names, no support, only spectacle. The driveway is a stage. The neighborhood, an audience too afraid to join. And Karen? She plays the role of unchecked power, relishing her spotlight. On a quiet Sunday morning, she decides to paint the fence. The brush glides over the wood, each stroke steady, deliberate. To her, the fence is meant to be a sign of care, of ownership, of pride. But as the sun beats down, she realizes it feels more like a barrier, a line marking her as inside. While the rest of them stand out there, judging, Karen strolls by, pausing just long enough to make the moment sting. Karen says, "Fresh paint. That'll help resale value?" For the next owner, the woman's grip tightens on the brush. She doesn't answer. She lets the silence work for her this time, though inside her heart pounds. The fence gleams white, but to her it is not purity, it is prison. By dusk, the paint has dried. She stands back looking at her work, but it doesn't feel like home. It feels like division. The following days bring a new pattern, folded slips of paper slipped under her door. Some typed, others handwritten. "We noticed your trash bins weren't aligned. Your garden lights are distracting." The words are framed as community concern, but each one is a needle. She walks past Karen one afternoon, note in hand. She says, "You send these?" Karen tilts her head, smiles sharp. Karen says, "People talk. I just write it down. It is death by 1,000 cuts, a strategy designed not to destroy outright, but to erode dignity over time." She pins the notes inside a folder, one after another, building her archive of proof. But still, each one lands heavy, another reminder she is under constant surveillance. The neighborhood hums with fake politeness by day, sharp whispers by night. By the end of the week, the sky darkens. Heavy clouds roll over the rooftops, thunder rumbling in the distance like drums before battle. She stands on her porch as the rain begins, soaking the street, washing chalk drawings off the sidewalks. Karen's car remains in her driveway, unmoved, tires glistening with rain. The storm makes the insult clearer, harsher. Even nature seems to underline the defiance. She whispers to herself, her voice lost in the rain. Storms pass. So will this. Lightning cracks across the sky, illuminating the street in white. For a brief moment, every neighbor's window glows, faces lit, watching. The storm exposes them, just as conflict will soon expose what lies beneath their silence. The driveway shines wet, reflecting the storm's fury. And she knows, the real storm is still coming. The storm passes, but its memory lingers. Days later, she notices children playing near the street, their eyes flicking to her driveway. A basketball rolls near her fence, and one boy hesitates before picking it up. He says quietly, "Miss, they're not fair to you." She kneels, handing him the ball. She replies, "Fairness isn't given. Sometimes you have to make it." The boy nods, glancing back at his parents, who quickly call him inside. Yet the seed is planted. Young eyes see what older ones refuse to admit. Their silence is not loyalty. It is fear. Later, she catches teenagers whispering, phones in hand, replaying Karen's smug comments on loop. Their laughter isn't mocking her. It's mocking Karen. Small cracks are appearing in Karen's wall of control. The woman feels it. Change begins not with the loud. but with whispers brave enough to grow. Another weekend, another insult. Karen parks across her driveway again, but this time, there is no pretense of accident. She leans on her car, arms folded, as if daring anyone to move her. The woman pulls up, her car idling on the street. The engine hums, headlights fixed on Karen's figure. For a long moment, neither speaks. Finally, the woman steps out. She says, "You know this isn't yours." Karen smirks, eyes glinting. Karen says, "If you wanted space, you should have bought more. Call whoever you want. The challenge is public, deliberate." Neighbors peek from blinds, some openly standing on porches now, waiting for the clash. The woman feels heat rise in her chest, but she swallows it down. Not here, not yet. That night she sits by her window, staring at the driveway still blocked by Karen's car. Her fists clench, her teeth grind, but she does not storm across the street. She remembers her mother's words, "Don't fight every insult. Choose the ones that matter," so she waits. Her silence is not surrender, but strategy. The neighborhood mistakes it for weakness, but in truth, it is patience sharpening itself into a blade. The next morning, Karen moves her car, triumphant in her mind. But the woman smiles faintly, unseen because she knows Karen expects noise. She expects outrage. Instead, she's given silence. And silence can be a weapon too. The battle isn't lost. It's only delayed, and every delay tightens the spring for what's coming. The next HOA meeting is announced, and she arrives early this time, folder in hand, determination stiffening her spine. But as she approaches the community center, the heavy wooden door slams shut right before she reaches it. She knocks once, then twice. No answer. Through the glass, she sees Karen's face, cool and unmoved, pretending not to notice. Inside, voices hum, decisions are made, about her, without her. She knocks harder. She says, "I live here. I have a right to speak." The door stays closed. A younger couple nearby shifts uncomfortably but says nothing. Their silence becomes another lock. She steps back, her reflection staring back at her in the glass. In that moment, she understands. The doors here are not just physical. They are barriers built by complicity. Justice isn't delayed. It's shut out entirely. But silence never lasts forever. The following week, whispers take root. At the mailboxes, in driveways, during evening walks, she hears fragments. They go too far. Karen's making it personal. Why is everyone afraid of her? It is not a rebellion yet, but it is doubt. Younger families start to see Karen's reign for what it is. Fragile power masked as rules. They don't speak openly, but their glances soften when they pass the woman. Their nods linger. For the first time, she feels less alone. Karen notices too. She sees the looks, hears the murmurs, and the tighter she clutches her clipboard, the more obvious it becomes. Control is slipping. The woman doesn't celebrate yet. She knows. A cornered enemy is the most dangerous. The breaking point comes on a bright afternoon. Karen blocks the driveway yet again, this time in full view of gathered neighbors. She leans against her car, arms crossed, voice loud enough for all to hear. Karen says, "If respect is what you want, maybe you should buy it. Everything else here costs." The crowd chuckles lightly, uncomfortable, but complicit. Eyes dart to the woman, waiting for her response. She steps forward, her voice steady, carrying through the street. She says, "Respect isn't for sale, and it's the one thing you can't take from me." The words cut sharp. A silence follows, heavier than laughter, as Karen's smirk falters for the first time in public. Neighbors shift uneasily, some lowering their eyes. The woman doesn't stay to savor it. She walks into her house, door closing behind her, but her words linger in the air like thunder. A storm returns days later, rain pounding against rooftops, wind bending the trees. By morning, she notices it. A crack running down one panel of her fence, paint peeled back, wood splintering. She kneels, tracing the fracture with her hand. It feels like more than weather. It feels like a reflection. Just as her fence has cracked, so too has the neighborhood's silence. What was once airtight obedience now splinters into questions, doubts, and murmurs. Karen walks by, umbrella tilted, eyes flicking to the broken panel. Karen says, "Shame. Neglect shows faster than you think." The woman stands tall, rain dripping from her coat. She replies, "Cracks only show what's been hiding all along." Karen keeps walking, but her steps falter. The truth in the woman's words follows her like a shadow. The fence still stands, but so does she, and both are stronger for their scars. Another Saturday dawns, sky clear, air heavy with anticipation. She returns from errands to find it again. Karen's car parked squarely across her driveway. No excuse. No accident, just pure defiance. This time, neighbors don't hide behind curtains. They linger on porches, leaning on fences, whispering to each other. The street hums with expectation, as though everyone knows something is about to snap. This woman parks calmly down the street, her movements steady, her silence sharper than shouting. She walks past Karen's car, eyes fixed forward, keys tight in her hand. Karen calls after her, loud, mocking. Karen says, "Driveways are for people who belong. Still think you do?" The woman stops at her front steps, the weight of every insult, every silence, every blockade pressing into her back. But she doesn't answer, not yet. Because tomorrow, she knows, the driveway will no longer be Karen's stage. It will be hers. She walks past Karen's car without a glance, into her house, and sets her folder beside the phone. The room is quiet except for the ticking clock, each second a reminder that waiting has a cost. She scrolls through contacts and pauses on one number she's never used here. Then she dials. She says, "Blocked driveway, private property, send a unit." The dispatcher asks for details. Her answers are measured, crisp, undeniable. While she talks. She looks out the window at neighbors drifting to their porches, faces tilted toward the show. She will not give them rage. She will give them procedure. She ends the call and steps back outside, letting the air cool her breath. Karen laughs from the curb, arms folded like a verdict already delivered. Karen says, "You think anyone's coming for you?" She replies, "They'll come for the car." Karen's smile lifts, but it doesn't reach her eyes. The street hums, a nervous current running through it. In the distance, faint at first, a low engine rumbles. The sound grows, steady as certainty, swallowing Karen's smirk 1 second at a time, until even the silence holds its breath. The tow truck turns the corner like a promise made of steel, amber lights pulsing across the tidy houses. Neighbors step off porches, phones raised, the wind carrying a hush that feels like a verdict forming. The truck idles at the curb, engine deep and patient, headlights bathing Karen in a pale wash. The driver climbs down, clipboard in hand, boots striking pavement with unhurried confidence. He takes in the scene, the blocked driveway, the car angled like a dare, the woman standing calm at her own front steps. He says, "Vehicle obstructing private access?" She nods once. She says, repeatedly. Karen steps forward, smile too quick, voice too bright. Karen says, "There's been a misunderstanding. We can handle this neighborly." The driver doesn't look at her. He checks the driveway lines, snaps a photo and circles the car. The chain rattles softly when he lifts it, metal language impartial and fluent. A teenager whispers, "It's happening," and the word moves through the crowd like wind through grass. The driver sets the hook with a practiced click, and Karen's laughter thins to silence as steel begins to speak. Karen squares her shoulders, volume turned up for the gathered audience. Karen says, "You can't tow my car. I'm on the board. I'll have your contract pulled." The driver doesn't flinch. He flips the clipboard, pen tapping the citation line. Driver says, "Board membership isn't a permit to trespass." Karen turns to the woman, voice dripping. Karen says, "You think this makes you belong? You think this wins you respect?" She holds Karen's stare, words clean and spare. She replies, "It wins me space. Respect is your choice." The driver kneels, chain links sliding over the axle with a sound that folds the moment into inevitability. Phones tilt closer, breaths shorten. The street, once complicit, now feels like a witness called to testify. Karen reaches for her keys, rattling them with a frantic brightness. Karen says, "I'll move it when I'm ready." The driver stands, calm as weather. Driver says, "You were ready hours ago." He presses the winch control. The cable tightens. With a groan that swallows the last of Karen's bravado, just as a polished logo on the truck door catches the light, drawing every eye toward a name no one expected to see. Screens glow up and down the street, the blue light of phones catching in the twilight. Unlike before, the silence isn't empty. It's heavy with anticipation. Children stand behind parents, eyes wide, while teenagers whisper excitedly as they film every second. The woman notices it, how the crowd leans forward now, no longer hiding behind blinds. They are waiting for the fall, waiting for the sound of chains doing what words could not. Karen turns toward them, arms spread as if commanding her stage. Karen says, "Don't you see? She's making this a circus." Her words ring out, but no one answers. Instead, the quiet hum of dozens of cameras fills the space. Silence is no longer her shield. It is evidence being captured, preserved, ready to spread. The woman steps closer to the curb, voice calm, almost too soft, but microphones catch every syllable. She says, "I don't need an audience. I just need my driveway." The neighbors exchange glances. For the first time, the silence isn't complicity. It's suspense. The driver presses the winch again, and the chain tightens with a metallic scream, a sound that slices through the neighborhood like truth long denied. Karen's car lurches, tires straining against the asphalt, rubber squealing as if refusing to let go. Neighbors gasp. The sound is louder than shouting, more final than an argument. It is the sound of power being shifted, of arrogance losing its grip. Karen rushes forward, hands raised. Karen says, "Stop. This isn't legal. This isn't fair." The driver's face stays calm, his voice even. Driver says, "Fair is keeping driveways clear. This is overdue." The woman doesn't move. Her eyes follow the car as it begins to lift, as steel does what silence never could. The chain tightens again, the groan of the winch echoing like a judgment long delayed. For years, the street has known only quiet submission. Tonight, it hears the language of consequence. The front wheels rise first, inches off the ground, swaying gently in the air. Karen stumbles back, her face draining as the metal groan grows louder. Her car, once her throne of defiance, now dangles like a puppet on strings. Neighbors murmur, shifting uneasily, watching the symbol of her authority leave the earth. Karen shouts, voice cracking. Karen says, "You can't do this to me. I run this neighborhood." The woman steps forward, her voice steady, cutting through the noise. She replies, "You don't run this driveway." The words land like a gavel, final and echoing. The driver secures the last chain, his movements efficient, unshaken. The car rocks higher, Karen's reflection warped in the polished surface of her own door. For the first time, her power looks fragile, and everyone can see it. The crowd leans closer now, their whispers no longer hushed but carried on the night air. Some shake their heads, others mutter openly. She blocked her again? Always thought Karen pushed too far. About time someone stood up to her. The murmurs grow, rippling through the street like a current breaking a dam. For months, silence has been complicity. Tonight it turns into judgment, and it isn't aimed at the woman, it's aimed at Karen. Karen spins, voice pitched high. Karen says, "Don't just stand there. You know me. You know what I do for this community." But eyes avoid hers now. The same neighbors who once looked away from her cruelty now look away from her plea. Silence isn't protection anymore. It's distance. The woman takes it all in, the subtle tilt of heads, The camera's raised higher. Power is shifting, and Karen can feel it. Karen steps forward, desperation leaking into her tone. Karen says, "I've kept this neighborhood perfect. Without me it falls apart." But her voice betrays her. The words tremble, cracking like glass under strain. For the first time, the control she wears like armor shows a fracture. The clipboard in her hand wavers. A man in the crowd mutters, "We don't need perfect, we need fair." His voice carries, and heads nod around him. Karen hears it. Her shoulders stiffen, her breath shallow. She knows her authority doesn't come from rules, it comes from their silence. And now, that silence is turning against her. The woman stands steady, eyes fixed on her, offering no comfort, no rescue. Karen is alone, and the street knows it. The car rises higher, chains grinding, headlights catching the dark. Karen's panic spills over. Karen says, "You think this proves anything? You'll never be long here." The woman steps forward, the crowd parting like a tide. Her words are measured, but each one lands with weight. She replies, "This driveway was mine to begin with. But now, so is the tow." Gasps ripple, phones jerk upward to catch every syllable. The line is sharp, cinematic, the kind of truth that doesn't fade. Even the driver pauses for a beat, a faint smirk crossing his face before he presses the winch again. Karen stumbles back, shaking her head, but no words come. The car rocks higher, her reflection stretched, distorted, powerless. The street is silent again, but this silence belongs to the woman. Dozens of phones rise like torches in the night, recording the car as it dangles, Karen's face twisted between fury and panic. Red recording dots blink across the crowd, capturing what months of silence refuse to confront. A teenage girl whispers, "This is going everywhere," as her camera zooms in on Karen's shaking hands. Another murmurs, "Finally," with the weight of relief in the word. The woman doesn't pose, doesn't perform. She stands steady, the chains groaning behind her like a choir of consequence. She knows this moment isn't just hers. It belongs to everyone who's ever been silenced, dismissed, humiliated. Karen shouts, desperate. Karen says, "Stop filming. This isn't your business." But the neighborhood doesn't stop. The raised phones are proof now, and proof is stronger than her rules. Her smirk is gone. Her spine, once stiff with arrogance, bends as though gravity has doubled its pull. She stumbles, catching herself on the curb, clutching her clipboard like a lifeline. Her voice breaks again, no longer mocking but pleading. Karen says, "Please, I can fix this. I can make it right." But no one moves. No one answers. The woman tilts her head, her gaze cold but steady. She doesn't speak. She doesn't have to. The silence from the crowd says it all. Karen is exposed, stripped of the authority she built on fear. The clipboard slips from her grasp, landing in a puddle, pages bleeding ink into the water. The symbol of her control dissolves at her feet, and the crowd watches, unblinking. For a heartbeat, the street is silent. The car dangles. Karen trembles. The woman stands rooted in quiet strength. Then, a slow clap begins. One neighbor, then another. The sound spreads, growing louder, bolder, until the street echoes with applause. The woman doesn't bow, doesn't smile. She simply breathes, taking it in. The applause isn't for spectacle. It's for truth, finally spoken aloud. Karen covers her face, shaking her head. Karen says, "You're all turning on me, after everything I've done," but the clapping drowns her out. Neighbors who once avoided eye contact now raise their hands high, cheering, voices swelling against the night. Silence is gone, replaced by something stronger. Unity. The woman closes her eyes briefly, whispering to herself. The silence finally broke. As the car tilts higher, a glint catches from the side of the tow truck. The logo, bold and unmistakable, reflects in dozens of recording screens, murmurs, ripple like a wave. The name painted across the truck door is hers. It is the woman's company. Gasps break through the crowd, louder than Karen's protests. The irony slices sharper than steel. The very hand Karen tried to humiliate is the one now lifting her car from the driveway. Karen stares at the name, lips parting but no words forming. Her empire of rules collapses under the simplest truth. The driveway isn't just hers to defend. The tools of justice are in her hands too. The woman speaks, voice low but carrying. She says, "This was never your ground. You just forgot whose name is on the truck." The winch groans one last time, chains pulling taut. Karen's car rises fully, wheels swinging free above the concrete she once claimed as her stage. The driveway, cleared at last, stretches open, wide, silent, and hers again. Neighbors watch, some clapping, others nodding with a relief that feels collective. The space is more than concrete now. It's reclamation. It's balance. Karen stumbles back, whispering frantic words no one listens to. The clipboard, ink blurred and useless, lies abandoned in the gutter. The driver nods to the woman, steady and professional. Driver says, "Driveway's clear. Where should it go?" She doesn't hesitate. She replies, "Anywhere but here." And with that, the chains tighten, carrying Karen's car, and with it, the weight of her false authority, out of the neighborhood. Karen retreats across the street, shoulders hunched, voice cracking with disbelief. She slams her front door behind her, the sound hollow, no longer commanding. The house that once stood like a fortress feels smaller now, windows dark, curtains pulled tight. Neighbors murmur openly, their fear gone, their loyalty severed. No one follows Karen, no one comforts her. She is alone in her silence, the same silence she once weaponized. The woman watches the door, unshaken. She knows the battle isn't about locked wood or painted fences. It's about dignity reclaimed. And Karen, for all her noise, has been forced into quiet at last. The truck rumbles down the street, taillights glowing red as it carries Karen's car into the distance. Neighbors remain gathered, not dispersing as quickly as they once did after spectacle. They linger, their faces different now, less suspicious, more respectful. The woman stands at the edge of her driveway, shoulders square, chin lifted. She doesn't speak, but the silence around her is no longer hostile. It feels lighter, almost reverent. A child's voice cuts through. Child says, "She stood up. She really did it." The words ripple louder than applause. The underdog is no longer invisible. She is undeniable, rooted on her ground, witnessed by a crowd that finally chose to see. The night after the tow, the street feels altered. Curtains that once hid silent witnesses now remain open, as if the homes themselves are less afraid. Neighbors walk slower, voices softer, their conversations carrying a new awareness. The woman sits on her porch, sipping tea. Her driveway lies empty, clear, reclaimed. The silence that surrounds her is no longer suffocating. It feels like respect measured in quiet. Across the way, Karen's house is dark, her blinds drawn. She has retreated, leaving the street without its self-proclaimed overseer. And in her absence, something shifts. People begin to talk. A man pauses near her porch, clearing his throat nervously. Man says, "Glad it's sorted." "Shouldn't have taken this long." She offers a nod, nothing more. She doesn't need gratitude. The driveway itself is enough. Its openness a symbol everyone can see. Within days, official letters arrive, this time not for her, but for Karen. Reports of misuse of authority. Complaints from neighbors emboldened by what they witnessed. The HOA fines her, strips her of her role on the board. Karen's voice, once booming across meetings, is now absent. Her porch, once her stage, sits empty. Neighbors who once bent to her avoid her now. Her silence isn't strategy, it's exile. At the mailbox, the woman notices Karen approaching, eyes lowered, pace quick. No smirk, no clipboard, only avoidance. The roles have reversed. Karen hides in silence, and the woman walks openly, unafraid. Justice hasn't shouted. It has whispered its verdict, and everyone has heard it. Weeks later, she repaints the fence. Brush strokes smooth, deliberate, the same care as before. But this time, the fence does not feel like a barrier. It feels like protection reclaimed. Neighbors walk by, offering nods, some pausing to comment. A woman says, "Looks good, sturdy, fresh." For the first time, the words carry no sting, no hidden edge. They are simply words of acknowledgement. The fence gleams white in the sunlight, not as a line of exclusion, but as a mark of presence. She steps back, paint flecking her hands, and smiles faintly. The crack that once marked weakness is sealed, but she doesn't forget it. The scar remains beneath the paint, and to her, that is strength. Change doesn't arrive in applause this time. It comes in quiet gestures. A wave at the mailbox. A child's shy hello. A neighbor leaving fresh flowers at her step with no note. It is not loud or sudden, but steady. The same people who once looked away now choose to look toward her, even briefly. Respect arrives not in words, but in the absence of hostility, in the choice to acknowledge her presence without question. One evening, a couple stops as she waters her lawn. The man says, "You handled it better than most of us could." She doesn't respond with pride. She simply says, "I handled it how I had to, and the truth is clear." She didn't win through shouting or force. She won by refusing to break, by holding her ground, until silence turned into recognition. Every morning, she steps outside and sees her driveway open, untouched, waiting for her car alone. What once was a battlefield has returned to its simple purpose, a path to her home, a marker of belonging, but to her, it will never be just concrete again. It is proof that standing firm works, that patience paired with resolve carries more weight than anger. Each time her tires roll across the smooth surface, she feels it. Victory in the ordinary. Neighbors notice too. Some glance at the clear driveway with small smiles. Some linger a moment longer before walking on. The openness is visible, undeniable, and it reflects something larger. Balance restored. The woman no longer walks with her head bowed. She doesn't need to. The ground beneath her feet affirms what silence tried to erase, that she belongs here. At first, neighbors only whispered about her strength. But whispers evolve. Soon they turn into greetings. A simple good morning at the mailbox. A wave from a porch. Children calling her name without hesitation. One evening, a family walks by and pauses at her fence. The father says, "We should have spoken sooner." Sorry it took so long. She doesn't offer bitterness. She replies simply, "Better late than never." Their relief is visible, their shoulders loosening as they continue down the street. Slowly, the community shifts, from silent observers to quiet participants. The neighborhood that once isolated her now begins to include her. Not with fanfare, not with apologies shouted, but with small, consistent acknowledgments. And those, she knows, carry more weight than any performance. Justice here does not announce itself with sirens or cheers. It settles quietly, woven into the fabric of everyday life. Karen is no longer the voice of the neighborhood, and the absence of her authority speaks louder than her presence ever did. The woman doesn't boast. She doesn't retell the story. She doesn't need to. The clear driveway, the folded notes of respect, the nods from neighbors. All of it tells the story without her lips moving. Justice has no need to scream when it has permanence. And permanence is what she has won. On her porch one evening she reflects. The driveway, once blocked, contested, mocked, became more than a strip of pavement. It became a lesson. Concrete can crack, but it can also hold. Silence can be cruel, but it can also shift. She whispers to herself, repeating her mother's words. Don't fight every insult. Choose the ones that matter. This battle mattered, not because of concrete, but because of dignity, because of the right to exist without bending. The fence, the doors, the silence, all once symbols of exclusion, now stand as reminders of endurance. She knows the cost of holding ground, but she also knows the worth. Her lesson is not just for herself. It belongs to anyone who's ever been forced to swallow injustice until the moment came to break it apart. The neighborhood will not forget the night chains pulled more than a car from a driveway, They pulled prejudice into the open. What Karen tried to bend with mockery, silence, and rules was something she couldn't touch: resilience. The woman walks her street now with a steady stride. Children wave, elders nod, and even those who once whispered against her keep their eyes lowered, unable to deny what happened. Her presence has become undeniable. Karen, meanwhile, remains behind closed curtains. Her silence now is not power but exile. She wanted to prove the woman didn't belong. Instead, she proved her own authority was fragile, breakable, temporary. The woman doesn't celebrate in noise. She celebrates in her quiet victories: the driveway open, the fence sturdy, the greetings earned. What was once bent has been reforged, unbreakable. One evening, as the sun dips low, she sits at the edge of her reclaimed driveway. The concrete glows warm in the fading light, the fence behind her casting long shadows. What once felt like barriers now feels like protection, and what once felt like silence now feels like space for her own voice. She reflects: justice doesn't always roar. Sometimes it arrives slow, deliberate, carried on chains, held in dignity, written in the quiet refusal to bow. The story is not just hers. It's anyone's who's ever faced a wall of silence and chosen not to shrink. She exhales, steady, as if her breath itself seals the lesson. Then she turns inward, words forming like an invitation to whoever might listen. What would you do if silence stood against you?
Share your voice below.